I get tongue-tied sometimes when I'm talking to you. Like, I see you there. I imagine you. I feel another person is with me and I'm sharing. But I get tongue-tied sometimes because I don't know how I feel. And sometimes if I try and plan what I'm going to say, it doesn't come out right. It'll come out too contrived. And then I'm always in these situations with other people where I'm in the moment, but I don't know what to say. And sometimes that's like silence, and sometimes that's good. Sometimes the less said, the better. But obviously when I'm talking to you, when I'm doing a podcast, I'm really focusing on you to think like there's somebody present here, and now I'm going to try and share. And that's my clock. An example of the kind of unexpected things that happen when you're doing a podcast. It has a beautiful chime to it. That's it, it's 2:00 on Friday afternoon. As I say, it has a beautiful chime to it. It's a clock, you wind it up. It's an Edwardian clock, it's 100 years old. And I wouldn't like to turn it off or close it down just because I'm podcasting. So I felt, well, really, we're going to have to live with that clock if I'm doing a podcast in this room. I was talking about the bad weather, the windy weather, the stormy weather. It hit the beech trees. The beech trees are very close to the house. I put them there because I thought that they might make a nice little hedge. That was 25 years ago. And I had a friend who also had the same type of tree, and they didn't grow for him. So I thought, well, if they're so hard to grow, and there's not many of them in Ireland, maybe I should let them grow, so that they would look tall and majestic. And so I let them grow, but I didn't think they would grow as high as they did. They grew twice as much as any normal tree. I have beech trees, and they have a kind of a standard girth and a standard height after 25 years. The Chilean beech trees are 3 times higher and 3 times fatter around the trunk. And I don't know what to do with them in one sense. And last summer, I saw one of the branches was so heavy. Now, I'm talking about you wouldn't get your arms round this branch of heavy wood going 20 metres up into the sky. And I noticed that it had begun to grow in a way that was leaning towards the house, and that if it fell, it'd hit the roof. So I was struggling with that last summer, and I came up with the ridiculous notion that because they were special trees, they were like rainforest trees, they're extraordinary special trees, and growing them I thought was like an act of creativity. It was an art work just to relate to them and be there with them and let them grow, and then you could say it was a contribution poetically to the environment, that we wouldn't be burning any more trees, that you would actually grow one of these trees, that it would be like a sacred space to just sit under them. And that worked very well. I used to sit under them in the summertime. There'd be lovely shade, and they're so big. They're just so big. They're like huge architecture. They're like huge rafters reaching up above you when you sit underneath them. Majestic. And they're green. They have a little green leaf, and it's green all year round. And then it sheds the leaf while it's growing the new leaf, same as most beech trees. But during the storm anyway, the big heavy branch broke and fell. And the cat was inside in the house. The cat sleeps usually beside a radiator, which would happen to be beside the window, which would happen to be where the tree was closest to the house. And that evening, the cat surprised me by wanting to go outside. And you'd be saying to yourself, why would the cat want to go outside in a storm? But out the cat went and didn't come back. Now, did the cat know that the tree was going to fall? Is there any possibility that the cat was clairvoyant? or that the cat's sensory system was so in tune with the nature of trees that he was automatically saying to himself, that tree is going to fall. When he came back the next morning, the tree was down. And the tree should have fallen directly across onto the roof of the house. But the tree fell sideways, miraculously missing the house. All I can say is that I'm deeply grateful. I don't know how it could have fallen sideways. The logic would have been fall down straight across the roof of the house, but no. Maybe the wind was coming from the northwest, pushing it sideways. But sideways it did go, and the only bit, the very top branches, be soft, bushy kind of branches at the very top of the tree, they rubbed against the wall of the house. But the length of the tree, I had to get out a chainsaw and strip all the branches away first, so you have the naked tree sitting there, and you can look at it and measure it, and then think, well, if that had fallen the way you would expect it to fall, we'd have no roof on the house. And needless to say, it was the 8th of December, so I indulged myself. I know it's a bit silly, but I like to say, well, it was an auspicious feast of the Mother of God. Why wouldn't you expect that you'd be blessed, that God would intervene and do something good to your life? That is naive, I know, because it's not the way things work. And if it worked like that, it would seem appalling for a God to intervene in my life and then not intervene in the lives of millions of people, let's say, suffering, who went into the gas chambers in Auschwitz, and there was no God to cry out or stop them. So every time I am, in a way, indulging myself in the idea that God intervenes in the world, I'm also a bit embarrassed because I'm completely aware that that is a way of mythologizing. It's a way of penetrating reality with myth in a way that is not really true and is almost offensive, I suppose, to other people. You know, if you are really suffering from some deep financial crisis and you're losing your home, or if you were very ill with a terminal disease and couldn't get proper medical assistance, you really wouldn't be too impressed by somebody saying, you know, that God might have intervened to make the tree fall away from the house rather than on top of the house. It smacks of what you'd call exceptionalism. You know what I mean? That I develop a relationship with God that's about me. It's about some private world where God looks after me, but I'm not really thinking about anybody else. And I'm the exception. And that's something that I have to fight against, because I have an imagination. A writer's imagination can run away with them. So I do fight against it. And I do know that the way that we do that, the way that we think about God's intervention, like that he's just sort of intervening in physics, science and the cosmos and evolution, is just interfering to help me. I think we all do it. And I find that for me, the way out of that is to understand the nature of God in a different way, to understand that God is not outside anything. You know, if God was separate from the universe, then God wouldn't be God. But God is in the universe, underneath everything, in everything, through everything. And the way the universe works to a great extent is by invitation and response. A situation opens up and the sun reaches out to the leaf on the tree, and the leaf of the tree reaches up to the sun as well. I always feel that's a kind of a mythological way of looking at it that helps me. I think of myself as the leaf. And it's not just that good things happen, like the sun just happens to fall on the leaf. No, the leaf actually reaches up to the sun. The leaf chooses the sun. Why the leaf chooses the sun is a mixture of a whole lot of other causalities. But just in that moment, you cannot say that anything in the cosmos is passive. everything is dancing. Everything is moving and evolving, including you and me and the tree that fell. We're all in this dance. Invitations come and we make responses. And in that sense, I feel the mythology of my heart does work on the outside. Not the idea that I'm neutral and there's a God that's outside the universe and that the God interferes with me and intervenes, but that in some sense I'm dancing among all the other things that are dancing, and we are dancing together. So if the tree fell in a certain way, then I must in some way try and find the response to that. Well, I found the response, which was to get the chainsaw and cut off all the branches. And then I looked at the cat and I thought, God, it's a strange cat that would know that. Would anticipate the tree was going to fall and he was nervous and couldn't sleep, which may not be true. But such is my mind. And I'm telling you all that because I feel it illustrates this strange confusion that I have, and I think everybody has, about faith and about the mythology of the heart. We all have this ability in us to mythologize, to fabricate stories that have meaning, that have a hero, that have sacrifice, that have love. And we fabricate them in our hearts. We imagine things and then the things happen. It's like you make an act of faith inside in yourself. And if you don't make the act of faith, you can't act. You might go down to the village and buy some flowers for your beloved for Christmas. But you couldn't do that unless you had faith. Faith in what? Faith in the inner story of love. This story of love that's in your heart. You love her, she loves you. I will buy her flowers. She will like them. She will open her heart when she sees the flowers. I will give her everything. The idea of that is it's kind of it's like a story. It's a myth in your heart. And you believe in it. And when you believe in it, you then go out and do it. And then it happens in real life. Because it's with that faith, you go to the shop and you buy the flowers and you bring them back and you put them on the table and she comes in and she says, thank you. And you feel joy in your heart because now she's opening her heart. And this is invitation response. This is like the sun and the leaf. This is like something reaches out to us, but we are reaching out to everything else as well. We're reaching out to the whole universe all the time. It's a beautiful dance, but it begins inside in the heart. Inside in the heart. There was a friend of mine, an icon maker, one time in Warsaw, and he said, he was talking about icons, he said, an icon must appear, before an icon appears in the world, he said, it must appear in your heart. I have that down as a little proverb now for myself. What did he mean? He meant that, an icon, they say, appears. Like, even though it's made, so I get a friend to make me an icon. And when it's made, I see it. I go to his studio and I see the icon. There it is. Now it has appeared. And I go over and I bless myself. I cross myself with my hand in front of the icon, and then I kiss the icon. And then the icon maker knows it's been a success, because I'm not obsessing on the beauty of the work. And I'm not looking at the icon maker and saying, God, you're marvelous. Oh, how amazing you did this. No, I'm actually immediately connecting with the fact that the icon is a mirror of the divinity that is everywhere around us. And I am looking at it like into a lens, and it's looking back at me, and I reverence it as a gesture, as a ritual of significance to say, I'm aware of God's presence in this room. And that means the icon maker was successful. And it is a phrase that's appropriate. The icon appeared. Because the icon holds so much of the sacred. It's like there's a light in everything, which is God's energy. And you don't see it sometimes. Most of the day I don't see it or don't think. And then sometimes accidentally I'm out walking, it's 4 p.m, it's a December day, the sun is going down, the slanting light across Loch Allen blows my mind away. And I feel there's more here than I realize. There's an extraordinary presence in this nature that's calling me, reaching out to me like the sun reaches out to a leaf, and I'm responding to it. I'm not blessing myself or going down on my knees or something, but in some way I'm responding physically, gratefully, for a presence that is numinous, that is transcendent, and yet it's there in the sky. And in this way, you could say these are invitations you get from the sacred. And I get that invitation when I see the icon. So the icon appears. So the first time I see an icon, I had an icon was given to me as a present, as a birthday gift last summer. And I knew it was coming, and they had the address to post it. And when it got to me, I opened it. And my eyes fell on it for the first time. Then I could say, it has appeared to me. Now, my friend in Warsaw, he said that the icon must appear in your heart before it appears in the world. If I didn't have a narrative in my heart that said, icons are beautiful, yes, I would accept a birthday present of an icon, send it to this address. This is acting out from my heart, my faith. But faith works with every action. It's not just religious faith. It's simply that if I thought that flowers would be beautiful on the table and that my beloved would like them, then I believe that. And that's why I get into the car and drive to the town and go into the flower shop and buy the flowers. If I didn't believe something, I wouldn't do it. Therefore, I would do nothing unless I believe. There's no action. Making a cup of tea, there's no action that doesn't have a prior sense of faith that this is a good action to do. This is the way it will work. It's like intention. The intention is itself an act of faith. You could call an act of faith an act of intention, because it always follows through on the outside. And I wrote a story. It's in the book Bird in the Snow. Now, the book is a novel, and it's about a woman from the time she fell in love to the time that her husband is passed away and she's remembering him. And I'd love to read you 2 pieces from it. The first is a section which to me is about faith in the ordinary, because this is a description of a woman meeting her partner for the first time. But if she didn't have an internal sense of belief, faith that she would meet him, then she wouldn't have noticed him. There's some way that to do things in the world positively, we need faith inside. And I don't mean religious faith. Let me read it for you. Everybody was there. This is describing a dance in the town hall in the 1950s. Everybody was there. Everybody saw it. When the vet slipped into her arms for the first time at a half-crown dance in the local town hall. The doctor's daughter was there, and the daughters of 3 solicitors. It was a beautiful array, an enormous amount of young girls, all lined up along the wall like flowers on an altar, perfumed as sweetly as princesses. The Comerford twins, picking their noses, the sergeant's big girl, and the 5 daughters of a man who owned half the shops on Main Street. A flock, a convent, a gaggle. And so beautiful in contrast to the pack of yahoos huddled inside the door, the gutter snipes on the balcony, the teddy boys at the mouth of the men's toilets, combing their greasy manes. What Betty Burke called the dregs of society. Boys who usually went to the 1-shilling hops. Boys who would climb in the toilet windows to get a gawk at dressed-up rich girls. At the hundreds of legs in sheer nylon, the princesses in crinoline, the lips sparkling like sweat on a raspberry, moist hands clinging to tiny black or white handbags that were all the rage at the time. Some of the girls wore long-sleeved white gloves that went all the way up to their oxters to hide the sweat, and others had slim cigarette cases of pure silver. Everyone dreaming of the moment they might sit in the vet's car on the road home, dreaming of that American moment, that film thing. Yes, there was more to cigarettes than was on the packet. There weren't a lot of vets in that town, nor were there many of those teddy boys who could afford to be driving around in a spotless black Ford like Mr. Delaney. And though every single girl on the floor was desperate for a good man, Birdie knew that only she had a chance. As sure as there were eyes in her head, she could say for certain that not one of them virgins could dance a foxtrot. Birdie read the situation the instant she looked down onto the dance floor. She was on the balcony. She could sense the breath leaving her body with fright. She thought she was about to faint. Christ, it was such a shock. She tried to look again to make sure she could believe her eyes. She surveyed them carefully, the entire line of virgins, alleged virgins, and hopeless spinsters in the hall below. Delaney was on the floor. She saw him glide, turn, reverse, samba. She saw him samba. Christ, he could dance. The style of it, and all they could do was giggle and trample on his toes, the poor man. That's why she went down immediately. As the committee began serving the tea, she marched across the floor, making a beeline for him, quick as she could before the Dinny Hughes big band dared announce a lady's choice. A lady's choice would have ruined her. She stood before the vet and stuck out her hand and introduced herself. No trimmings required. How do you do? I'm Birdie Waters. Are you the new vet? Indeed, a new man in town. I see you can dance, says she. Not a compliment, mind you, no. An evaluation, a statement of measure. But let them call her what they like. Birdie knew that none of them was a match for her. That was it. The vet took her hand in his hand and placed the palm of his right hand between her shoulder blades, and off they went. She could glide across that floor with such ease that he realized she was a treasure from the word go. The rest of them didn't have to look in, once she got him on his feet for the first time. And in the years that followed, there was something else he treasured more than her little feet, and that was her honesty. She spoke her mind. She told him all her secrets, and she demanded his. As she walked across the floor of the town hall that night and stuck her hand out, some of the snooty bitches could be heard bemoaning the recently abandoned social practice of class segregation. Half-crown dances used to be reserved strictly for the well-heeled, and shilling hops for the children of the poor. There was a time, and it wasn't that long ago, they muttered, when teddy boys didn't get in toilet windows, and girls from the terraces would have more respect than to march up to a member of the professional classes and force him to dance. But there was no sign on Alex Delaney's face that he had been forced into anything. In fact, he looked the picture of contentment as he glided around, spinning her around, turning her in ever more extravagant flourishes and twirls as the evening progressed. Every sign on his face that the woman he had been waiting for had just entered his life. So that's the first piece I wanted to read, and it's like Birdie in that little story. She couldn't do what she did unless she had faith. And I'll read you now another bit from this little book, Bird in the Snow. And this is Birdie many, many years later. And she's an old woman, and her husband is long dead, and she has a little OXO box, and she keeps it up in one of the wardrobes, and it's full of old photographs, old memories. But Birdie is wandering around the house on her own at this stage, in her 80s. And she's kind of sometimes in the middle of the night losing it. She sometimes kind of wakes up and thinks, I'll go and make a cup of tea. And she doesn't realise it's only 4 in the morning. And she goes down to the kitchen and she makes the cup of tea. And then she's standing there at the kettle and she's looking at the kettle thinking, what am I doing here? Why am I here with a kettle of water? She can't remember what she came down to do. So that's the zone that Birdie is in at this stage in the novel. She can't bear looking at that OXO box. Why is it sitting there? And who took it out? Birdie needs to sleep. She needs to sleep. She had a long day to get through, the darkest of all days. So she leaves the kitchen and holds the wall as she moves down the hall and then up the stairs. Slowly now, one step at a time, one hand on the banister, one hand on the wall. That's it, that's good, and back to her room again. Pull back the bedspread and the blankets for the umpteenth time. Ease herself down onto the pillow. Must sleep. Must be ready for the morning. Christ, help her to sleep. And he does. Christ indeed helps in a kind of a way. Because that's when she begins to hear the organ playing. Oh, that's lovely. That's a relief. That's a good sign. The organ is a good sign. She hears it often as she lies in bed, after sleepless nights, when she has been tortured by the things she told nobody in a lifetime, bombarded by hurtful things her memory stored up over the decades. Sometimes she reaches dawn in a lather of sweat, breathless and exhausted from the struggle. But she's always relieved when the music returns. and with the first light of day now filtering through the curtain, she begins to hear the organ playing, as she floats in a bed that has been the safest and most beautiful place in the world she has ever known. It's the bed the vet bought in a furniture store in Athlone, and she complained at the time, protested, said it was too much money, but he wouldn't hear of it. He kept saying it was worth every penny. And maybe she was inclined to agree the day the lorry arrived from Athlone, causing a stir behind the lace curtain windows on the main street as it drove through town with that big bed sticking out to the rear end. The delivery lorry processed slowly up the avenue to the vet's hall door. Birdie stood there with a dishcloth in her hand. In those days she was rarely seen answering the front door without a dishcloth in her hand. Her heart was palpitating, a mixture of excitement and fear. First off the lorry were the table and 4 chairs for the dining room, then a dark mahogany sideboard. They were impressive, but it was the carved lattices and curves of the bedboards, the sheer size of the O'Dear's mattress that gave Birdie goosebumps. She had to sit down on one of the chairs in a fluster of anxiety, as the 2 men with Roscommon accents, assisted by the vet and his one-time boarding-house companion Eugene Devine, negotiated the bed and mattress in the door and up the stairs, assembled it in that very room where it has lasted, just as the glossy magazine had promised, for a lifetime. Eugene Devine was small, bald, and pot-bellied, and he had fat little fingers, and he had to stretch his feet to hit the organ pedals, and nobody ever believed he was an organist until they heard the bellows roar. Eugene, like a commander-in-chief, making great emotions, burst forth from the pipes in the organ loft with the squeeze of his plump little fingers. That was Eugene. And then the church fashions changed and the organ fell silent, and Eugene went off down a labyrinth of the town's little side streets, walking his dog for an unbearable amount of years. And then the dog disappeared, and Eugene continued for a while, with sunken red eyes that constantly streamed water and required him to hold a white handkerchief in his left hand forever. Eventually, Eugene disappeared. He was a bachelor. Nobody knew what illness he had been suffering from for years, apart from the nurses who changed his dressings once a week. But he's still there with Birdie, and in the last hours before dawn, she can walk through her desolate house and still hear the plaintive music that Eugene's little fingers commanded out of the air. Not the thunder of "Here Comes the Bride." No, that was Eugene's pièce de résistance, which he had let rip in the church at the end of every wedding for as long as anyone could remember. He called it World War III. But that's not what Birdie hears. She hears the soft whisper of the harmonium playing Gounod's Ave Maria, as Eugene played it on that September morning in a small church on a hill just outside the town. It was a Gothic stone church, flanked by 2 grand chestnuts. It was so small, and she loved the shafts of amber light that filtered through the stained glass behind the altar, and the smell of candle grease. It was like being at the door of heaven, the old people used to say. And that's Birdie remembering her wedding day. I've seen it so many times with somebody in their 80s, where they have memories, and the box of memories, maybe a box of photographs, is like they were icons. It's a beautiful thing to see, because you're seeing inside somebody's heart. you're seeing that in the heart there is this act of faith goes on, and it actually defies age and it defies passing time. So that there you are, like 40 or 50 years after the person has died, and the one that's left to grieve is there with this icon, and they open it, they look at it, and a smile and a joy comes to their face, and they're remembering stuff. Ave Maria. And in that moment she's remembering the amber light, the light coming through in the small little church. And it's like she's there all the time then. So the moment when she made her vows, and when somebody said to her, this is forever, she in old age realizes it's true. When you do something, particularly when you make a vow, a promise, it is forever, and you're kind of reliving the same moment every moment. You're fulfilling the vow in every moment. You can come to old age and your memories, your photographs are like icons because they light up the eternal world, the world of forever, the world of the invisible. And you still feel the same joy and the same happiness, even though you're carrying the sorrow of grief or loss or old age. So there were two little stories I wanted to share with you. Birdie and how she got her man, and then Birdie remembering her man. We couldn't act without faith. And our faith makes us like the leaf and the sun. We're not just neutral in life. There are invitations come to us. Invitations to love. And then we respond. And we take risks when we're responding. So that's it. I didn't know I'd go on so long. As I say, I get tongue-tied when I'm talking to you. I don't know what to say. Sometimes I plan it really deeply. And then sometimes I just get carried away because I have a sense that you're there. I have a sense like there's somebody in the room. And that for me is an act of faith. I'm actually kind of exploring the idea of faith by doing a podcast and by sharing this with you. And it's very, very strange from my side, but very pleasing. And I believe that this thing of faith is like, it's a human thing to believe in other people. It's a survival mechanism to believe in other people. It's a happiness pill to believe in other people. And yet, it all has to happen in the heart first. Before it appears, before the beloved appears in the world, the beloved has to appear in your heart. Before the icon appears in the world, the icon has to appear in your heart. So it's amazing how much everything is rooted on the inside and on the heart. And I think the old person, as I say, looking at a photograph like it was an icon. It is an icon. It's an image that's presenting to them a lens into eternity, into heaven. Because that's where all our dear ones have gone. At the end of this, I feel so happy that I've shared with you. I have been here and I've had a sense of your presence and a sense of talking to you. So I hope the idea of love works for you, that you have an internal chamber, a room in your heart where you can be awake and aware, where you can feel your mentor deity, Christ or Buddha or whoever, blessing you and being there with you. And that you can explore in there what your hopes and your dreams are for Christmas. And then make them come true. And thank you for being here. Bye-bye.